Well, thank you, Marcia. I appreciate that introduction. Um, just in the interest of respecting everybody's time, I went ahead and scripted my comments because I can kind of ramble on,
I'll say.
but I will not do that tonight. I timed this out. It's 3 minutes and 4 seconds long, and so so here we go. Um, what I'm about to share with you might actually be the most important thing that I learned from my homeschooling career. And it's also, I believe, the thing that makes graceful homeschooling possible. And that is what I'd like to talk to you about is graceful homeschooling. From the moment that we are old enough to be self-aware, we are all on a quest for identity. Education, from the Latin verb educare, which means to lead out, aids this process. The question is this process of education one of creation or of discovery? Now, if identity is created, then education becomes a means to this end, and the teacher, a co-creator. This definition charges the process of education with a kind of metaphysical angst, in which everything that the student or the teacher does has make or break power. Every assignment you give or fail to give, every test students pass or fail to pass. If we're talking about home education, then we can ratchet that up a notch or two. Not only does the schooling process have the power to name your child by this paradigm, but it has the power to name you. If Junior gets an A, then you get an A. If Junior gets an F, well, you see, if identity is created, then homeschooling, like everything else in life, is suddenly a terrifying proposition because you can do it wrong. Not only that, but you probably will do it wrong. I mean, in the quiet of our own hearts, we suspect that despite all of our best efforts, we really aren't quite good enough. No matter how hard we work or try, we will do something to mess up the works. The word on the street is that we aren't perfect, which is a positive way of saying a negative thing, that we are sinful, fallen, depraved, and that this depravity and failure touches everything that we do, even our very best efforts. But what if we've got it wrong? What if identity isn't created, but instead received? Consider, you received your life as a gift. With it, you received a name and a place in your family community. But more fundamentally still, you have received a name which predates that other name and which comes from a better father. Galatians 4:6-7 tells us, quote, "And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God." The riches we inherit in this verse, referred to in this verse, right? These riches are the naming works of Jesus, which fix our future hope. And in light of this better, more foundational identity, our own work ceases to name us, but instead becomes an expression of received identity. Suddenly, everything finds its rightful place. The work that we do, the relationships that we have, the possessions that we accumulate, all are suddenly understood as gifts. And education is one of these gifts, not the process of creating a child, but rather the process of helping that child discover who he was created to be. And the teacher in this paradigm, what is she but a trustworthy guide and co-discoverer? The knowledge of identity as something fixed in the finished work of Jesus Christ redefines education, eliminating the metaphysical angst. It's the end of striving and the beginning of grace-filled rest. It tells us that we can't lose, and our kids can't either. It frees us to admit our ignorance and to seek wisdom. Can you see how beautiful life and learning become when understood through the naming love and grace of Jesus? And home, that place where we are both known and loved, is the perfect place for this kind of discovery to unfold. So, graceful homeschooling. It was the thing that saved my life through this very intense process. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be everything. And you're not creating them or destroying them when you miss a test or you throw your hands up at the end of the day and say, well, that's not getting done today. Because you're a co-learner. You are doing nothing more than mentoring them into a discovery of the person that the Lord created them to be. I hope that's encouraging to you tonight.
Missy confined her comments to 3 minutes because I told her I wanted 2 minutes to talk too. Since I'm setting up the meeting, I got to get up in front of everybody for just a minute. But I really appreciate what she said. The idea that's driven us in our homeschooling journey over these last 25 years is the idea of how to find out who we really are in the essential inner nature. And it's the number one job of the homeschooler, of the homeschool student and parent alike. We, Missy and I, are bookish types, and we've organized our homeschool project around not only that big sort of theological idea, but also of the curricular idea of great books and literature. If you are interested in that subject too, we've spent a lot of time putting tools together and putting resources together to help a literary education get off the ground. One of the reasons we're interested in literature so much is that in the literature of the Western world, we find great thinkers, great writers, great artists wrestling with this same question that Missy's just described. Who am I really as a human being? What is my essential nature? What is my name? And who gives it to me? All of the great books of the Western tradition are preoccupied with that question. And if we can learn to read them well and learn to embrace the answers and the questions that they pose along these lines, then we become really educated people. So literature is the subject that we've sort of focused on. And as Marcia said a minute ago, the great thing about homeschooling is you can pick and choose from a lot of different sources based on your own personality and your own gifts. You can cobble together a curriculum for your kids, the math curriculum from here, the lit curriculum from here, and piece it together to match your own approach. Again, if literature is something that you're interested in, we have a lot of tools and resources for that. They're on our website, centerforlit.com. And I'll just, since I do have control of the meeting, this is probably an unfair thing for me to do, but I'll go ahead and show our website, centerforlit.com. It's available to anyone with a web connection and that hasn't been stopped by the COVID crisis. I think we all have enough speed to get online, but a ton of resources for anyone interested in walking their students through the great books. We offer teacher training and curriculum materials for K through 12, based on the principle that all great stories are put together in essentially the same way, and that if you can learn to read them and recognize their shape and their structure and their elements when you're 5 years old and 8 years old and 10 years old, reading picture books and chapter books and books for young readers, then by the time it's time to really address the great questions in Shakespeare and in Dostoevsky and in Mark Twain and Charles Dickens, you'll be ready because you've had long experience with reading and with encountering those deep questions. So if you're interested again in literature, in using literature as part of your homeschool curriculum to engage with this central fundamental question, who am I? What kind of creature am I? How do I relate to the one who gives me my name? We have a lot of resources that may be helpful to you. Once again, that's centerforlit.com. And if you have any questions about it, you can get a hold of me or Missy, Adam at centerforlit.com, Missy at centerforlit.com, and we'd be happy to talk with you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks very much, Adam. I have to say I'm desperately glad that you cannot switch to different scenes in my home. Careful what's behind my camera. And I did mean for you guys to have more time. So I feel a little sad that you scrunched yourselves into 5 minutes because I think I meant for like 8. But I can tell everyone out there that Adam and Missy are super fun to talk to. They have wonderful ideas that you could crunch on for a long time, as I'm sure you can tell. Just good mind substance and mind candy, if you want to call it that. So thank you guys very much. And I encourage all of you to check out Center for Lit. And Missy, can I ask you, is your book on its way to the publisher? Is it out?
Well, it should be coming out on Mother's Day this year. So it has been a long slog getting it to be printed, but we're about there.
Its title is My Divine Comedy, A Mother's Homeschool Journey, and it's a retrospective of Missy's long career in homeschooling, to be published basically on the occasion of her graduating her last of 6 out into the world. So
Yeah, and the subject matter of it, it is a memoir style, but the subject matter is largely the one that I was speaking of tonight, this issue of identity and homeschooling. And I work it together with the idea that homeschooling is a second chance at your own education. And we all say that, but most of us don't really know that that's truer than we understand.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is the
I think
subject.
it's one of the best parts. That's great. Well, congratulations. That's really great. Wonderful. And we'll get to hear from your youngest, Charlie, this evening. Is that right? Is he available to do his little blurb on what it would be graciously homeschooled?
Yes, he is.
Good. Good. All right. Well, it is my pleasure then to move to Celeste Engel, who is a calm and kind and gracious person. I have never seen her seem to be anything other than that. She has 4 kids and has in the past organized some retreats for moms around the Charlotte Mason education philosophy. And so she is going to share with us something about Charlotte Mason and then how she puts that into practice at her home. Celeste.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Celeste, and I fell in love with Charlotte Mason education several years ago when I was first starting out my homeschooling journey. I guess I should tell you I was homeschooled myself, and so I was really excited to get started with my own kids. So first of all, who was Charlotte Mason? Charlotte Mason lived from 1842 to 1923, and she was a British educator who worked hard to improve education. She believed in a liberal education for all, regardless of social class. She developed her philosophy of education through years of teaching children, lecturing on education, training teachers, and writing. Much of her writing has been compiled into her six-volume set, Home Education. So I'm going to talk about a few key principles that I see as some of the most important principles of her philosophy. The first is that children are born persons. And this sounds like just a statement of the obvious sometimes, but we often overlook the fact that each child is an individual human being who thinks, acts, and feels. We treat them sometimes more like possessions or pets. We look at their mind as something for us to write on like a slate or something to be molded. But Charlotte Mason respected a child's mind as capable and with an appetite for knowledge. Education should always see the child as a whole person, not just how many facts he knows or what tests she can pass, but a person capable of growing and maturing and gaining knowledge for himself as a child of God, just like the rest of us. Charlotte Mason says, the question is not how much does the youth know when he has finished his education, but how much does he care? And about how many orders of things does he care? In fact, how large is the room in which he finds his feet set, and therefore how full is the life he has before him? And this leads us to our second important aspect of a Charlotte Mason education, and that is that it should be a feast of living ideas. And this is the first thing that drew me to the idea of a Charlotte Mason education. Just the idea of living ideas, living books, rather than memorizing facts, textbooks, worksheets. Not that there's anything wrong with those in their place, but this captured my imagination, her imagery of a feast. Imagine a meal of delicious foods presented beautifully. And so Charlotte Mason described our curriculum in the same way. It should be a broad feast of a variety of subjects presented in a way to appeal to the children's appetite for knowledge that's already God-given. As she said, we spread an abundant and delicate feast in the programs, and each small guest assimilates what he can. And our business is to give children the great ideas of life, of religion, history, science, but it is the ideas we must give, clothed upon with facts as they occur. And the last main point that I'm going to talk about is all education is self-education. So Charlotte Mason believed that the goal of education was that the children, the students themselves, would take responsibility for their own education. This doesn't mean it's not the same as unschooling where they just pick whatever they want to learn about. We still direct it, but the child needs to have that desire to learn and do the actual work of learning and processing the material for themselves. We don't need to water it down. We don't need to digest it for them. Our job as an educator is to present the ideas and to guide them. She said in Volume 6, the children, not the teachers, are the responsible persons. They do the work by self-effort. And of the teacher's role in education, Charlotte says, his part is not the weariful task of spoon feeding, but the delightful commerce of equal minds, where his is the part of the guide, philosopher, and friend. So in respecting a child as a person, spreading a feast of ideas, and giving the child an interest in his own education, we use living books, beautiful art and music, laying down of habits, time outdoors in nature, plenty of time to digest the ideas given, and the narration or telling back of the ideas by the child. So how does this look in my home? It means we read many living books. So a living book is a book that's written with high literary quality, with full of ideas, not just facts. Obviously, it should contain the facts, but it's written in a literary form. So first history, science, literature, geography. After each lesson, the child narrates or tells back in his own or her own words everything they can remember in the correct sequence. And that is the way for them to assimilate and process that lesson. It means each lesson is short, relatively speaking, and that they are varied to use different parts of the child's brain and body. So we alternate between lessons that use their hands and their brain and some exercise so that they have a variety. It means that while we certainly focus on math and reading and all of the basic essentials, we also don't neglect art, poetry, music, and handicrafts. We spend a lot of time outdoors exploring and learning about nature. All of these are important parts of providing a rich and full life for a whole person. In conclusion, here are a few ideas of how you can join up with other families to enrich your Charlotte Mason education. Start a nature walk group. We have done this off and on with friends. It can be pretty informal. Basically, you just meet up somewhere, explore, maybe have a plan for what you're going to look for or learn about, maybe not. You could start or join a co-op. This would be a great option for a deeper community and for filling in any areas that you as a mom might feel you're lacking at home. Get together with a group of moms for a study of books and Charlotte Mason's writings on the philosophy. I'm going to end with a quote, another quote by Charlotte Mason. It says, "What is education after all? An answer lies in the phrase, education is the science of relations. What we are concerned with is the fact that we personally have relations with all that there is in the present, all that there is in the past, and all that there will be in the future, with all above us and all about us." And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Celeste. I have to say I'm very drawn to the beauty and richness of Charlotte Mason's ideas, and I have not finished all 6 of her books, but I am working through them and I'm enjoying them. And I think all 3 of the things you mentioned have been something that groups in the Colville area have done at one time or another. So it's good to know those are available. So if you guys have questions for Celeste, we'll put those at the end during Q&A, and that should be fun. So we're going to move now to classical education. And I know a lot of families actually combine a classical Charlotte Mason approach in a lot of ways, but we have Allison Davis, who will be describing classical education and talking about a local homeschool program that helps support families who are pursuing that at home. And I have the pleasure of working with Allison. I am part of a local community, and she oversees several of those in this area. And so I've really appreciated her wisdom and her patience over the years as we've pursued that here. So Allison, it's a pleasure to introduce you. Do we have Allison?
Allison, I think you're still muted.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Marcia, thank you so much for having me. I'm kind of wishing I had a script right now because I get a little nervous and I wasn't expecting to be on video either. So I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, I just want to start with a scripture. Proverbs 2:6 says, "For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding." And I am just so thankful that he really, the ability to learn comes from God. Our kids' ability to learn, our ability to learn as we're redeeming our education as we homeschool them. And I'm also thankful that he has given us and equipped us as parents with everything that we need in order to teach them. And I often need to be reminded of this, that he has given me what I need and he has equipped me, and that it won't look perfect, and that's okay. And he knew that when he asked me to do it. When he called me to the task. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the classical method or model of education. And when we're talking about the classical method, really, we're just talking about the natural process of learning that any of us go through when we're learning a new subject. And that process, that are the 3 stages of learning, is often referred to as the trivium, which is Latin for where 3 roads meet. And those 3 stages of learning are, or 3 roads, are the grammar stage, the logic stage, or the rhetoric stage. So there are 3 stages of learning that we go through when we're learning anything new, but they're also closely related to developmental stages that children go through when they're going through their education, maybe their K through 12 education. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those stages. So the grammar stage is pretty young children, maybe 4 years old to 11 or 12 years old. They memorize really easily and readily and find a lot of joy in repeating things back. And so during this time, we just want to build a foundation of knowledge in many different subject areas. And then the logic stage is that next stage of learning where kids are maybe 11 to 14 years old. Kind of the middle years, and maybe they get a little bit argumentative or a little bit contradictory during this time. And we want to just teach them to have proper argumentation and to be respectful in their questioning. And this is the time where they really are starting to see a relationship between those facts and that knowledge and the foundation that they're learning. And then that final stage is the rhetoric stage. So that's maybe the high school years, maybe 15 to 18 years old. During this time, they have a desire for independence oftentimes and a desire to express themselves. And so we want to teach them the art of rhetoric and expressing themselves well in their speaking and in their writing. And so we want to give them lots of opportunities to do that. So really quickly, I'll tell you about a new subject that I'm learning this spring, which is gardening. And so I'm going through those 3 stages of learning right now. I'm definitely in the grammar stage. So I'm learning about what zone we're in and what types of vegetables and the soil and what the soil needs are. So then moving into the logic stage, which I'm not there yet, I'm going to be learning about how those things work together, the relationships with those things between the soil and the different types of vegetables and even the fence and how high it needs to be to keep the deer out. And then the rhetoric stage, that final stage of learning, would maybe be me writing a book on gardening, or maybe just the actual process of growing the garden to feed my family would be the rhetoric stage. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the program Classical Conversations that my family has really been blessed to be a part of for several years now. We meet in local communities. It's a program that helps parents create local communities where we meet one day a week. And there's three programs: the Foundations, the Essentials, and the Challenge program. And the Foundations program closely relates to that grammar stage program. And it's about K4 through 6th grade. And it's a lot of memorization and then some discovery with science and art. And then also they get to start practicing presentations. And then the Essentials program is about 4th through 6th grade. And it's an English grammar and writing program. And then the Challenge program is those junior high school years where they get together and express themselves in their writing and their speaking and just in conversation about all that they're learning. And we do have two communities in our Stevens County area. We have one in Colville and one in Addy. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the programs or about classical education. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Allison. All right, so next we have another approach to learning. So we've heard Charlotte Mason, classical with an overview of grace through the whole thing. Another popular approach to homeschooling is to base your instruction in a particular curriculum. And there are so many curriculums, I don't even know them all. But I think one of the oldest is actually the Abeka program. I know it was around when I was a kid, and I was also homeschooled for about 4 years during my primary education. And so Lori Wilkening is going to share with us about what it is like to use a curriculum throughout the K through 12 program. She has 2 boys, I believe. Are they both graduated? Maybe she can tell us. And I really appreciate Lori too. She was part of a ministry that I was able to come and participate in when we first moved here also, and that was a huge part of getting to know quite a few other moms in the area. So it was for young moms, and it was just a nice, refreshing time. So Lori, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi there, can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Lori, and I have 2 boys. One has already graduated. He is 19 right now, so he's already finished with his schooling. He's doing other things now. And then I have a 15-year-old that I'm still homeschooling as well. The background for my education as far as teaching my children at home, we started when they were preschool, and all the way through we've done homeschooling with the Abeka program. So with the Abeka program, it is a curriculum. There are different options. I will go over those a little bit but just so you know, I started out using the curriculum because the video program helped my children learn every subject that they needed to learn, but in the casual atmosphere of being at home and able to help them through each of their different subjects. So we used Abeka all the way through, and one of the biggest things that won me over for Abeka is a biblical worldview approach in every subject. And so every one of them work together to glorify the Lord in each subject that you're learning. And so the curriculum itself through Abeka has a great biblical approach. And then I also appreciated, since I started them out so young in the curriculum program, is that it's a spiral approach. So starting in kindergarten, they learn the foundations of what they already are learning when they are their numbers, their letters, you know, the foundation there. And every grade after that builds upon that foundation. So it's a spiral approach. Each year they start out with the basics, so they can get all the information from what they've already learned the year before, and then build upon it to more complex things throughout the year. So I love that approach as well, because even if you have a summer off and you come back refreshed again because you're starting with the basics again, and then they go right into more complex things. So they are, I like the spiral approach, I really do, because it helps them learn and continue on. So some things about the Abeka program itself: it has become a lot more flexible than it started out. It did begin in 1972, so it is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, homeschool curriculum-based approaches in the United States, and they have become more flexible with their abilities of what you can do. So just for instance, in our Abeka catalog, I get a lot of information from this, but you can use it parent-led. You can just buy the curriculum by different subjects by themselves with all of the supplies for, say, English or for arithmetic. You can buy the supplies for that and do it all yourself and do a flexible approach that way. Or you can, like our program that we used was the DVD approach or the streaming online. And that comes with everything the child needs for that year for their grade. And you get all the supplies, the testing, the curriculum, and everything together so that you have everything you need for that year. But like I said, it's become a lot more flexible. So parents now can choose to do a subject. If they want to supplement whatever they're doing at home, they can supplement with an English program, and then they can do it online with master teachers who teach them. I have really loved the Abeka program. My boys have excelled in different areas. Just for instance, my oldest was when you get to high school and choose the different subjects that you want to learn in a higher level, he went more towards the algebra, and then he would like the chemistry and all of those physics, and he loved that math and science base, and he is using that now. He's actually studying to be an EMT, so he is using that information now. But my youngest is not very proficient in math, and so he prefers to do history and be in the when he does science, he studies biology instead of chemistry, and that doesn't have all the math in it. But it's just really exciting to see how the Lord is leading them in different areas, and that we can help them build that knowledge in their elementary and high school years to move on to bigger and better things, whatever the Lord has for them to do. So I have loved the Abeka program. It has been great for our family. And like I said, it has become a lot more flexible for parents if they want to supplement different things. Just a couple things that I wanted to mention as far as help for parents these days, especially being home with their kids now and needing, some resources. Abeka does have some things on their website. So abeka.com does have a lot of information regarding the curriculum, as well as just supplemental things if they would need some help with that. As well as on Facebook, we have 2 different pages specifically. Abeka Homeschool, which has a lot of great supplemental ideas for reading, for helping them with their math skills while they're at home and not in school. And then also a group called Abeka Academy Homeschool Parent Group. And that helps with different questions you might have about the curriculum, how it's used, and how best to use it. So we have enjoyed it. It's been great for our family. And we have really, the boys have really excelled in using this curriculum. So we have really enjoyed it, and I don't mind answering any questions later on as well.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Lori. I think a lot of the curriculum approaches look really neat. So if you guys have questions about Abeka, please do ask Lori. And then our next presenter is Rochelle Shuram. She pieces together an education that works for each of her kids, and of whom she has 5. So it's a good full-time job, I'm sure. I do sometimes have to drive past Rochelle's house to get to town, and I am always very impressed by what she has accomplished there. I think she knows how to use power tools, which I just watch from a distance and feel impressed by. So she will also tell us a little bit about how she incorporates just basic life skills into her kids' education. So thank you for being here, Rochelle.
Thank you. Okay, so I was public schooled. I wasn't homeschooled. I was public schooled. And where I was when I had my 5 children was in Minnesota. And I grew up here, graduated from Colville. And so did my husband. We both graduated the same year. And it was never on my radar to homeschool whatsoever, not even a little bit. Even when my oldest was maybe 3 or 4, I still had no desire to homeschool whatsoever. But the Lord worked on me, and next thing I knew, it was bugging me to even think about it. So what I did is I started with Abeka, actually. And she did Abeka exclusively until about the 3rd grade. And we hit a weird bump when the daughter below her started schooling. She was learning actually at a faster pace than LeVay was, which was my oldest. And then next thing I knew, I was starting to accommodate, and Abeka was very easy to switch out certain things. There were certain things that frustrated one kid, but the other kid got completely, and it was making us delay. So that's where I started this whole eclectic school program. Is I found that one daughter did really well with math with this curriculum, which was teaching textbooks, and another math did was more like a hands-on math you see. So anyhow, that's what got me started on the eclectic version. And the homeschooling thing, I'm by all means not an expert on. I have asked almost all of my friends, what do you do with a child that learns like this? So what I've done is I've done a tailored education for each child. How does this one learn? What works best for them? But the end result being the same thing. I have the same goal, which is to raise children that first and foremost have quality character skills, you know, their solid core beliefs and who they're going to be based on character. But after that, acquiring the knowledge to achieve what what God has meant them to be. And so that might be, if I can tell that a student is strong, like in science, like with Colin, and that's what they like, then I am going to push further on that, but still have a baseline for the other subjects of what they are. So that's the head knowledge portion of my homeschooling. The other portion of my homeschooling has a lot to do with your basic life skills. They're doing laundry, dishes, all the home skills well before they're able to probably write a letter properly. They're very proficient. They can do almost anything in the garden. They can do, sometimes I'll let them touch my power tools, but we'll see. That requires me letting them. So no, but they're very proficient in many things, but I also go on their strengths. And it's really interesting to me that we live in a time where we can choose that kind of homeschooling. And I encourage people that if they have a child that can't sit still, that's okay. They can still learn a lot and not have to sit still. I have 3 that don't like to sit still. And the funniest thing about that is they're my 3 most, I wouldn't say smartest children, but the ones who can like rattle off information that you're just like, wow, how do you know that? And so I think those children, I have joked, if they were in public school, would be on Ritalin if I would let them, but I wouldn't. But they are the ones that I have noticed are the hardest at sitting still and just like, okay, you're going to sit here and you're going to do this. And I remember when I was a kid, I did not like sitting at a desk and doing math and just getting in a flow of getting it done, and then the bell rings and you're like, oh no, like no, I'm like in them, and then you go back to do it and you couldn't think anymore. And so that is what has really solidified my husband and I in this way that we educate is based on getting that end result of raising children that have good character, and they're getting the education that they need to either go to college if that's their desire, or a technical school, or become, a mother, a wife. And so the end result in my schooling, I hope, is whatever I've put into them is to achieve the top quality education that they can, the way that they best can learn. So each child I have a different education for. And it sounds kind of exhausting, but it really isn't, because once you've done it with one, the next one comes along and you're like, okay, well, they get to do this, this, and this, and I can do this, this, and this with the other child. And okay, they can't do this, so they're going to do this one. And times 5 children, I've found that there's a similarity in most, but then there's maybe just one aspect that's different. Like maybe it's math, maybe it's memorization, maybe it's reading, maybe it's phonics. It's different with each kid. But I encourage anyone that says, oh, I can't homeschool. I always say to them, neither can I. Me either, except for here I am doing it. And so, people say I don't have the patience. The Lord gives us what we need, and I'm so thankful for that. And so I just encourage anyone that if you're like, I'm not smart enough to teach my child. Well, it's kind of like what Missy said. You're learning right along with them. You're educating yourself right along with them sometimes, and that's okay. And I think it's great. So I'm trying to stay pretty precise there because I don't want to go too far over, but I'm always open to any questions. I try to emphasize to people that homeschooling should not be stressful. It should not be scary. because there's so many resources. It's unbelievable. And there's so many curriculums. I've used so many of them, and I still use little pieces of all of them. So I think that we should be thankful for the time that we're in. So thanks.
Thank you, Rochelle. And I think that is one of the wonderful things about homeschooling is that you can tweak it where it's needed so that each student has hopefully the best possible choice for them, which is great. And you'll have to send your kids up here because I don't know how to garden yet. Maybe I should come to your homeschool, probably. So our next presenter is Leanne Davis, and I've known Leanne for several years as well and have just appreciated her passion, enthusiasm, and zeal for learning and for teaching her kids. And she has a great Newfoundland accent, which is one of my favorites, and has 7 kids who she is successfully homeschooling each day and has a good routine for that. So she's going to share with us about how you homeschool with a large family. So thanks, Leanne.
Thanks, Marcia. So for those of you who don't homeschool, let me start off with telling you this. About 20 years ago, I was totally against marriage. I didn't want anything to do with kids. And I believe that homeschooling was for really weird people who lived out in the woods. Present day, next month, I'll be married 18 years, which my family's still shocked about. I have 6 children and 1 on the way. And homeschooling is my favorite thing to do. I love homeschooling. And I'm so grateful to God that He changed my heart. And my life is so full of joy that I didn't even know existed. So I'm representing the large family. I'll start off with answering the question that I get asked most often. Why do you have so many kids? After becoming a Christian, which my husband and I didn't become Christians, so after we were married, we started studying God's word on this subject and really looking at our hearts. And we became convicted that to completely surrender to God, that had to include my womb. Now, I know this is like super taboo subject, but Romans 12:1 says, present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And that just spoke to me so deeply. And for someone who didn't want kids, I love being pregnant. I love labor and delivery. I love everything about babies and children. So He has just done a 180 on me. But you know what that means. Like the reality of homeschooling in our house is I'm having a baby every other year, sometimes back to back. So you talk about just a big interruption in your rhythm of things. But it's a beautiful interruption. It's an interruption where our children can learn the value of family. They can learn to love and learn to serve and be patient. So I'm very grateful that God has changed me the way that He has. Okay, I'll get to the logistics because I know that's where everyone wants me to go. So I made some points here so I could organize my thoughts. Number 1, you cannot have a large family without obedience. You just can't have a boatload of kids that don't obey you. So I just feel like for children to be a blessing from the Lord, which He's promised us from Psalm 127, how can they be a blessing if they're rude and disrespectful and disobedient? If you train up a child according to God's word, it should run pretty smoothly for the most part. If they don't obey you, how are they going to do their chores? How are they going to complete the academic assignments you've given them? I just think it's a crucial habit that we have to get established early on. Number 2, planning and consistency. Our family thrives on structure and routine. During the winter, we get real serious and we get a real tight schedule, but spring, summer, fall, you just forget about that with planting and harvesting and animals being born. We can't restrict ourselves to such a timed schedule. However, a plan and a routine must be maintained. You have to plan for science experiments. You have to plan for potty training. You have to plan for meals. I can't imagine 7 people coming to me and asking me, what time is supper going to be? Every night we have supper at 5 o'clock. I'm super consistent about that. Everyone knows what to expect. My husband knows what time to be home from work. And you don't have this crazy pregnant woman like tearing apart the cupboards because her body's on a schedule. I know what time we're going to eat. Number 3, time management. I often get asked, where do you find time to teach all those individual grades or individual students? We start our days off all together. We all do our morning time, which is from the Charlotte Mason method that Celeste was talking about. We do it right here in the living room, and most of the time it's really beautiful. Ironically, today was terrible. I mean, everything that could have went wrong did, I'm sure. But typically, it's a real nice time for our family. We read the Bible together. The children recite their scripture memory. We sing and try to memorize a hymn, and we read a short chapter from a missionary biography. After that, I send the two older girls, 11 and 14, downstairs into a very humble study room that we've made for them. And they complete all their assignments, which have been designated to them at the beginning of the year. Now, I know that sounds intense, but that's where the planning comes in. My husband and I spend several days during the summer planning for the academic year ahead. Now, how do you know that your kids aren't down there just goofing off? Well, that comes back to point number 1, obedience. Ephesians 6:1 is so clear. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. And if they can't obey by the time they're that age, I would say you need to forget about the academics for a while and see what's really going on in their hearts. So while the girls are downstairs studying, that's when I take the time to teach the 6 and 8-year-olds their subjects. And during that time, my 2 and 4-year-old, they get really special activities, things they would never normally get during the day, things that most mom might actually forbid, but it works great in my house. Okay, there are definitely interruptions. And I think that's good training for all of us. I grew up an only child. I was spoiled rotten. Everything always went my way. And I want to teach my children the earth doesn't revolve around you. There will be interruptions, and that's okay. We need to be patient through them. Time management. We have to use every minute. At lunch, we read science. When the baby's napping, I send the little ones outside with very intentional activities. Pick the strawberries, bring wood in, go catch insects. And that's when I take my 2 big girls and I teach them the harder subjects. Grammar, help them with their math, help them with music, read history. Sometimes my high schooler has a more time-consuming project. So we'll work on that in the evenings when my little ones go to bed, which brings me back to routine. My little ones are in bed every night by 7:30. That gives me plenty of time in the evenings to do what needs to be done with the older children who needs help. You have to use every minute. I don't have time to even be on social media. I'm not on Facebook. I don't do any of that because I don't have enough minutes in the day. When you have a large family, there's just some sacrifices you got to make. When you have to change things as things change. For example, this year we'll do school through the summer because in September, Lord willing, I'm going to have this next baby. And when most kids are starting school, my kids are going to be starting vacation because that's when I'm going to have a baby. So that's when we need to take that break. And I would really encourage you to just get your mind out of what you think might be normal school and do what you need to do to make it work for your family, your schedule, your plans you have for that year. And even when I do have a baby, I'm going to say this. It's not a huge interruption when it comes to academic learning because my children on vacation means mama's on the couch nursing the baby while I read and read and read. And we just love to read. We read a ton. That's mostly what we do for our education is read. So I think they learn just as much then, if not more, than when they're on their normal schedule through the year. Okay, so we're a large family. It's hard. God didn't promise anything to be easy, but he does promise us joy. And there is joy in our family most of the time. I mean, we're not perfect, but it's pretty joyous around here. Matthew 16:24, Jesus said to his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. I used to believe that living like this was full of self-denial, but anymore I realize that this is what
Did we lose Leanne?
Okay, am I back?
Yeah. You're something epic. Can you hear us? Leanne?
Okay, I think I'm here.
Okay, I can hear you now.
We can hear you, Leanne. Keep going.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what happened. It just cut out, and I'm not sure when it cut out.
You were finishing up with joy
It was
and
joy.
not
Okay.
feeling like smile.
Okay. So I was quoting Matthew 16:24 when Jesus is telling his disciples, if any man come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross. And I used to believe that living like this was denying myself, but now I realize that it's what gives me fulfillment. I love to serve my children. I love to be a part of this family, living life together. So that was my ending.
It was an ending worth waiting for. Very good. Thank you. And I think it's fair game during Q&A to ask Leon what these fun forbidden activities are for the young children, because I'm so thank you. I really enjoyed listening to you talk. And all right, our next presenter is Malin Kearney. I really like Malin. She is a mother of 2 grown sons. She has succeeded, but she still pours into younger homeschool moms through a support group in town here that she's going to tell us about, and just being a thoughtful and wise person. And I have really appreciated that over the years. So Malin, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Marcia, Malin's having internet difficulties. I think I can see her video feed, but I have from back channels that she may have a little audio trouble. So let's be patient.
I may have just got in. Am I up?
Yep.
You're
Yep,
up.
you're up.
Well, isn't that nice? Thanks, John. What I want to talk about is a couple of the homeschooling support options that are available in our community, things that probably aren't apparent right at the front. For 20 years, there has been an organized group of homeschooling moms meeting monthly in Colville. CASH is their name, and CASH stands for Colville Area Christian Home Educators. We meet together on the 3rd Tuesday of each month during the school year and welcome any mom considering homeschooling or actually homeschooling. Our goal is to encourage those walking this challenging path. Meeting this way provides an opportunity for moms and families to meet, as well as to learn about homeschooling, as well as the logistics of handling life as a homeschooling family. Things like exactly when would one prepare a meal or get the laundry done? The format for CASH's 2-hour meeting begins with a faith-based short word of encouragement, followed by announcements of events and opportunities relevant to homeschooling families, a break for refreshments and conversation, and then an hour's program focused on a particular subject. Periodically, we have a speaker, but most often this time is spent participating in discussion, intending us to be better prepared to handle the various aspects of our days and lives. I should add that often nursing babies attend our meetings. Out of this may come opportunities to connect with another family, join up with a field trip, participate in a sport, get input on particularly helpful curriculum or find out what didn't work at all and why, talk with a mom who has got some time under her belt, find out good books to read, or to benefit from an older mom's successes and failures. So the other thing I want to talk a bit about are co-ops. While there is no formal or ready-made co-op structure in our area, co-ops are an additional format which some homeschooling families use and others may wish to explore. There's a wide variety of possibilities. Co-ops might meet 1 day a week or every other week. A session might last just 6 weeks or maybe designed for the school year or perhaps for a summer. They can operate for a trial period. They can be done with one other family or with several families. Content can be anything that benefits from a 1 day a week meeting for instruction or practice or discussion. Co-ops can help with subject areas far beyond STEM subjects, and because we are not just minds, but our whole people, these are essential inclusions in an education. Consider writing classes, art instruction, art appreciation, Shakespeare readings or acting, handicraft instruction, dance, nature study, debate, foreign language practice, book discussions, both in the context of literature and history, recitation of memory work, singing together, composer study, field trips, sports, poetry, service projects, and discussion of science research that was done during the week. Co-ops give your children the chance to be with other children as well as interacting with other adults. You can probably sense that in order for a co-op to be successful, it is important that clear expectations are voiced and discussed. A shared philosophy of education is extremely helpful. This is not usually a drop the children off type gathering. The usual pattern is for those families participating to split up the teaching areas, though sometimes a tutor might be brought in. Input regarding forming a successful co-op can be obtained by asking moms at CASH who have done this or using ideas available online. One of the things I particularly enjoyed about the co-ops my boys and I participated in is that they usually ended with a festive night, a presentation to which family and friends were invited. So in addition to the opportunity for participants to speak or recite in front of their fellow students during the weekly gatherings, on these closing nights, they would be speaking or reciting to a larger audience composed partially of people they didn't know. If that sounds uncomfortable, know that this was often done within the comfort of a group presentation. So both group meetings for moms and the structure of co-ops offer additional support to a homeschooling family.
Thank you, Malin. I appreciate you being here. I've known Malin since the very beginning of the Center for Lit days back in the early 2000s, and she's been a supportive friend all along the way. Really appreciate you and your comments. I believe that Marcia has lost her internet connection. And so in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and well, I guess usurp is the right word. I'll usurp the captaincy of this little ship, and we'll move on to the next person on our list, who is Dottie Nielsen, someone else that I've known since the very beginning of the Center for Lit days, maybe even before. Good to see you, Dottie.
You too.
Dottie's going to be talking with us about creative support for other homeschooling families. And I don't know exactly what that's going to entail, but I'm looking forward to it. Go ahead, Dottie.
Hey, there's Marcia.
Hey, oh, hi, Marcia. You're back. Oh, you're muted, Marcia.
Sorry, that was just,
There you go.
yeah. So I just wanted to introduce Dottie. I'm glad it worked to get back just now. I'm so sorry I missed one though. So I will hear what comes in Q&A, but Dottie has just been a huge help to me this past year in our Classical Conversations program in town. And she will tell you that it's not a big deal, but I know the truth. It has been a really big deal. So I just wanted to say that before you start talking, Dottie, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning. My homeschool story is slightly different from most of yours. We started in 1996 when we moved here, and we were farmers. My sons were 14 and 16 and 30 minutes away by car from the high school, probably an hour and a half if they took a bus. And my husband decided that that was too much time away from the farm in the fall and the spring when he needed them to help. So he decided that I would homeschool. And because I have a degree in elementary education, to him that seemed very logical. It scared the living daylights out of me. I was a public school teacher. They do not look, in those days, particularly positively about homeschooling, and I had absolutely no idea what to do. Leslie Kalusny had a group of ladies, homeschoolers, all come and visit with me to give me ideas, and they all, oh, you're a teacher, you know what to do. That's not how I felt. I was absolutely scared. It's a very different situation. But I had to do something, so I just jumped in, and we started with math. We did a little bit of grammar. We did a little bit of history. Chris Hoops had the Horn book, if any of you knew that, in Colville, and my sons took some homeschool classes there. Marcia's heard me say very many times, I hardly did any schooling. My boys were always busy on the farm. They're now 39 and 37. They finished homeschooling. They both took the SAT. We got a great big fat SAT book. They both went through that. I have two sons, sorry. And they both got good scores. They got into colleges. One went to New St. Andrews in Moscow, Idaho and graduated. The other went to LeTourneau University in Texas and became an engineer. So even though you feel like you didn't do anything as a homeschool mom, sometimes it works out okay. After that, I worked at Westover, where Adam used to be, for 6 years, and then it closed, and I continued to do the same kind of teaching for 2 years after that. And then now I help Ashley Anderson homeschool twice a week, and I work at Classical Conversations once a week. So there are moms out there, older moms who have homeschooled and an interest in education, who can help moms who want to homeschool and either have lots of children and need a little bit of extra help, or are brand new at it and not sure where to go. So I think that's the creative support that she's thinking of.
Well, I think it's great. And I think it's one of the evidence is that when you are choosing an education for your kids and pulling it together, really the sky's the limit on how you choose to do that. And that's a joy to be able to just problem solve and say, hey, this part isn't working. We're going to find something that does. We're going to tweak and change and shift. And that's something all of us need to do throughout our lives anyway. So thank you very much, Dottie.
You're welcome.
All right. This next person I'm introducing is not on the video yet because he's sitting next to me. So you know he's awesome because I married him. And I'm just going to introduce my husband. He works full-time as a physician's assistant here in Kettle Falls, but has always wanted to learn cello. And so this year helped start a homeschool, or not a homeschool, it's just a family strings program. So our whole family is learning stringed instruments now, and along with some other families in town, which is really fun. So I will let him tell you a little about it. I'm just going to move.
I will seamlessly slide right in. All right. Thank you, guys. Adam, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Sometime. So I was public schooled. I'm just going to give a few comments. I was public schooled. My wife was not. There was a clash of the titans when we met. But I learned and I grew, and I wouldn't have it any other way for our kiddos. And I tell them, my children repeatedly, that my wife is the smartest woman this side of the Mississippi that's capable of teaching them. And if they can't learn from her, they're in deep trouble. As I said, I was public schooled. I liked music as a kiddo. I was always interested in music. I wanted to play the drums. I was told, no, you need to play the saxophone. So that's what I did in band for the first couple of years. And I had played some piano when I was a little younger. And I liked music, but I liked money more. And so when the opportunity came when I hit 16, I decided I needed to get a job because playing in the high school marching band wasn't going to cut it. So that was the end of my musical career, but I always loved it. I loved the violin. I loved the strings. I got rid of the idea that I would ever be a drummer, which was fine. I have a child who wants to be a drummer. So when we moved to Kettle Falls, we were looking at some options for what we could do for our kids. And there was a homeschool strings program up in Spokane, or down in Spokane. And so we started going down there once a week. It was on Thursday afternoon, so I was at work. Marsha would drive down. We have a Suburban that's a gas guzzler. I wouldn't trade it, but it's expensive. They'd get down there, they'd spend an hour in a class that was excelling faster than they were, and then they'd come home, and it seemed a bit of an effort on everybody's part for something that was mild to moderately successful. The kids seemed to take off pretty good with it. I didn't really get to participate much with them. Marsha had bought me a violin. I had shoulder surgery, so I didn't think I could actually twist my arm enough for over a year. And the cello was deep in my heart. So my wife and children put in their money and hid a cello and got it over from the East Coast a couple Christmases ago and gave it to me, which was a huge, wonderful gift. And so trying to figure out how to introduce a strings program into our family, not in Spokane, but locally, we started kicking around the idea of, if they can do this in Spokane, we can do this here. And so started looking around at just interest levels, who else might be interested. Got a group of people together who kicked around some ideas. at the end of the day, it boiled down to instructors. So we searched high and low, and we found a couple of instructors, one that could teach strings, well, specifically fiddle style, as well as mandolin and guitar. So we set up 2 classes for him. And then we found another instructor that can teach classical strings. And so we architected the program such that kids could learn either. Another big component that we wanted to ensure was that it was affordable. So we set the price at a reasonable fee for kids, so $25 per kid per month for 4 one-hour lessons, or a weekly 1-hour lesson with an instructor in a group setting, which I think was a little bit of a stretch for the instructors to get their head around how to do something that they think is one-on-one, and trying to encourage them to know you can actually teach this in a group setting. And so for one of them, it was more of a challenge than the other. At the end of the day, it's working well. And then we capped the program at, I think it was $75 for a family. So we actually have some whole families participating. There's quite a few of Leanne's kids in there. There's another whole family that there's 6 of them participating. The 6 in our family participate. And so it's a very affordable, reasonable, easy thing to do. It just takes a little bit of legwork. And the neat thing is we can practice there, we can practice at home, and we're all squeaking our way to getting a little bit better at it. So it's possible, it's doable. I'm thrilled that I get to participate with my kids, and I'm thrilled that they are actually having fun. And they are most days.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll turn this back over to Marcia. Thank you.
Lovely. So there you go, more problem solving. So now to end the evening, we can all throw around our beautiful ideas, but they are happening to other people in our lives. And one of those people is Charlie Andrews, who is Adam and Missy's youngest son. And he's here to share with us what it's like to be homeschooled, and also to share a little bit about how he has been involved in sports locally as a homeschooled student.
Charles, you want to just monologue, or shall I ask you leading questions? Maybe some softballs or some.
I guess I'll just monologue.
I knew you would.
I have no trouble monologuing. Always been a talker. Made it difficult for Mom in the classroom, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm Charlie. I was homeschooled K through 12, and very happy about it. Just to start off with that, the first thing people ask you is, "You were homeschooled. Didn't you want to go to real school?" I'm like, "No, you kidding me? Homeschooling is the best thing ever happened to me, for sure." My favorite thing about homeschooling was that I got to have real relationships with my siblings and my parents. And I think being out in the world, I'm in college now. I'm actually a freshman at Hillsdale. It's you can see the effect of that in people's lives and in my own life, and it's a great blessing to have that base and foundation. And I think I attribute that to homeschooling. I was with Mom all day long, and then Dad was right upstairs. And just being in an environment when you're young like that, you're around the people who know you and love you. That's so valuable. You can't trade that away. Also sports. I love sports. I got to be involved in the public school sports system, which was pretty great. It involved me driving to town a lot. We live out in the middle of nowhere, which is the best place in the world, but it's a bit of legwork. So it takes a little more, I guess, dedication if you want to be an athlete. You have to kind of go out of your way in some ways that other kids don't. But I think I wouldn't trade that either. Taught me a lot about being a self-starter and going after something you want, and putting in the hours even when no one's watching, because there's no one there to watch. You know, it's I think there's a lot to learn. I think I learned a lot of things in high school and getting in college that set me up really well there. So I got a lot of friends who asked me, like, "What's going on? You seem to have it all figured out." And I'm like, "No, this is just, I was just around my parents. This is what my dad says. I don't know." Like, so yeah, I think being homeschooled was a definite blessing in my own life, and I think it's the best way to be brought up.
Charlie, tell them what sports you played.
I played basketball in high school and picked up track starting in 8th grade. And now I high jump on the college track team I go to.
And you just played at Kettle Falls, right? Just the regular.
I just played at Kettle Falls. It was awesome. It was a great experience. I thought it was good. People were always surprised that I could talk to people. I think they have this idea that if you homeschool your kids, they're not going to know how to have conversations with people. But actually, I think that if you're around people who are older than you all the time, you're capable of a lot more like conversations that involve a lot more depth than a lot of other kids my age. You know? Just anyway, yeah, it's so yeah.
Very fun. Well, it is true of some homeschoolers that they have to be taught how not to have conversations with with people. We have one of those.
It might be true of Andrews's also in particular.
True for me.
Well, Charlie, you were a great end to the presentation. Thanks very much for taking time. And I know you must be very proud of all of your kids. So I see that we have just a little bit of time. We did go longer, which I secretly kind of knew we would end up doing because we're all talkers. So if any of you participants have any questions, I know it looks like some have left already, but please feel free to ask. And I'm sure that any of the panelists would be happy to share more. And if not, that's okay too, because it is a wonderful evening at home. So
if you do have a question, make sure that you send it to all panelists and attendees in the to box there so that everyone can see it.
all right. And I don't know what's the appropriate amount of time to wait. Maybe someone's typing with one finger right now. I don't know. So, but please, if you do need to go, thanks for joining us. It was fun to chat with you. And I'm sure all of you listening are equally interesting to talk to. So I hope I get those conversations soon. Oh, and Leanne, now that we're down to just a few, can you share with us your forbidden child activities?
Sorry, trying to unmute myself. So, like a lot of families, we love Dr. Seuss books for the little ones. I believe it's put a love for poetry in my girls. Anyway, we love to make oobleck, which is like ridiculous. I mean, it's messy, it's green, it gets everywhere, and the kids just love it. So my 2- and 4-year-old, they'll play with that for like okay, here's Monday. We're good. We're good for like an hour, pretty much, with no interruptions. Markers are forbidden in my house. I've had too many things marked up with markers. So during the time I teach the 6- and 8-year-old, the little ones are allowed to have markers. They're strapped in their chairs with markers. So I let them wash the dishes with a lot of soap, and they just think it's the best day ever if they're allowed to get up and wash dishes. We have had these big containers like totes with water and then buckets of water. And I've done the same thing with dried beans, and they just love it. And you know, that teaches them so many things. You don't even realize that they're learning when they're emptying, and, you know, just getting that sense of space and gravity. And even my 4-year-old's like, I didn't drop the bean. It was gravity. So it's fun. That's some of my activities that the kids really enjoy.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't think we have more questions. So it's been really fun. I have really enjoyed listening to every single one of you. So thanks very much for taking the time. And I look forward to seeing you guys around soon somewhere. So, and thank you all for everyone who joined us tonight. And hopefully this was encouraging to just realize, obviously, that we're all messy people and somehow we're still doing it. So you can too. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for coming, everybody.